How's it going, Ryan?
Not too bad. What's up, man?
So Ryan, Pound is a two-piece instrumental band from Seattle. You guys make sludgy, technical, grind mathcore. You guys put out your first two records in just under a year, right?
Yeah, that's correct. We worked really hard. After getting the first album out, we immediately started the writing process for the second one. That was already somewhat along the way while we were working on the first one. It's our One of the advantages of being in a two piece is we're able to move a lot faster than other bands. There's less cooks in the kitchen, so bouncing ideas off of each other moves a lot more quickly. So usually when we're in the process of recording an album, we're already in the writing process of the next one. And then during the tour cycle, writing just kind of falls by the wayside a little bit. But usually we'll have a rough idea of at least 1 to 2 albums ahead of time mapped out. So when an album finally releases, whenever we drop an album, we're usually at least 50 to 80% done writing the next one.
Wow.
It can be kind of frustrating sometimes, though, because everybody else is experiencing the music that we've written, a year to a year and a half ago, and we're playing all these songs that we wrote a year to a year and a half ago, and then but in the back of our heads, the music that we really want to be playing is the stuff that we're working on now.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, so we kind of switched up what we were doing with our live set a year or so ago, because we decided that it's our band and we're just going to do what we want with it. So now when we go on tour, we'll usually play a couple of the songs that aren't released yet. So it kind of gives us a chance to work out the kinks a little bit. We'll make some changes to some things depending on what the audience interaction is like with the new material that we're working on. So whenever you see us live, you usually get to see 2 or 3 songs before anybody else does, which I think is kind of cool. I like it when bands do stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
hopefully other people will dig it too.
Yeah, that's definitely providing a very unique experience for your fans. So do you guys have new music on the way already?
Yeah, we're about 4 or 5 songs into the writing process of the next one. I've got uh, I've got a number of other files that are kind of in various stages of completion, just some different riffs and ideas and concepts and things. And I think right now we've got 17 or 18 different ideas kind of bouncing around. But we've got 3 that are done and another one that's about halfway there. We just haven't gotten to the point where we're actually playing them up to speed yet and ready to go. So
Okay.
that's going to take a little bit more time.
Wow. Is this going to be along the same lines as your last two releases?
I'm not sure yet. We're kind of pulling some influences from some other things. For the album that we just recorded, we let a lot more of our influences from the hardcore and sludge worlds into what we were doing, and try to kind of slow things down a lot. There's some more doom elements, some more noise elements going on. Things are sounding a lot more chaotic than they did in the previous one, which
Okay.
I like.
Yeah.
But for this next album, we're trying to pull from some different influences that we haven't quite let into the mix yet before.
Okay.
So we'll see how things progress. Usually the way we approach songwriting for an album is we'll say, okay, this is what we sound like now,
Oh,
and here's a new thing that we want to add to what we're already doing. And so then we'll take what we're doing and we'll incorporate it into what's already there. And so that way we have kind of a rough target of how we want things to sound overall for the entire album. It kind of helps keep things a little bit more cohesive.
cool.
That way we don't end up with riff soup.
Nice. Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's really cool. That the project's growing with you guys as people. That's really interesting, and I'm sure you can hear that with each release. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. And you can hear it a lot faster because like putting out albums at a much faster rate, you get a much more clear picture of the evolution of where we're at as a band and where we're at as people.
cool. Is this going to be one record that you're releasing coming up, or is it going to be like a couple different EPs, or how do you guys plan to release it?
We're not too sure yet. We've been kind of going back and forth on that. We have about an hour 15 worth of new material right now that we just got done recording, and we're in the process of figuring out whether or not we want to put that out as 2 separate albums or whether we want to do a double album. And then we also have a couple of EPs worth of material that we've been working on for a couple of different projects. One is kind of a drone noise EP that's completely different from anything else we've done. And then it's very much in the avant-garde realm.
Okay.
And then we're also working on a covers project with our friend Lindsay from Coma Cluster Void.
Oh, nice.
She picked all the songs for the EP, and we're doing 4 songs, all covers. None of them are metal songs, and we kind of did our take on them. And Lindsay's coming in and doing her vocal parts on it, so that'll be a really fun. It's kind of a bit of a palate cleanser between albums.
Wow, that's
break up the writing process a bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I'm sure it's a ton of fun to do too, especially when you get to work with friends.
Totally, and it gives us an excuse to like work with some other people that we don't normally get to make music with and do things with. So it's cool.
Nice. You guys put out a really cool video back in December for your last record. Do you guys have any plans for upcoming music videos? You guys do anything new with that?
Yeah, we for the last album, there is a music video for every song on the record, and then for the next album, we're in the process of shooting content for that. We have 14 songs to deal with, so we're coordinating with our videographers that we always work with. Is this company out of Spokane called Counting Coup Media? Really good friends of ours that have done the vast majority of our video content. And so we're working with them to come up with some concepts and some ideas on what we should and shouldn't be doing, and like how to provide a visual aspect to the music that we're making. And the visual world has just never quite been my thing. It's just not a world that I'm really intimately familiar with. So I usually leave it up to them to kind of come up with the concepts for things, and then we'll bounce some ideas back and forth and what isn't, and they'll come up with some ideas for some cool stuff for the different parts of the songs. And it's also nice to have some people that are a little bit outside of the immediate heavy music world working on our video content, because then we get some more fresh ideas. Things tend to stand out a little bit more because they look different from everything else that everybody else is doing, and I kind of like that.
That's really cool. Yeah, you guys are working hard, crazy.
Yeah.
Now, you guys, since you guys play such incredibly technical music, I mean, you must have some really cool gear that you work with.
Yeah. Well, David and I are both kind of gearheads. We're always tweaking our rigs and making changes and things. And, I always feel like a bit of an idiot when I talk about what's in my rig in interviews, because the interview will come out a week or 2 later and I'll already have changed something. And so then somebody will come to a show, see my rig and be like, dude, you said this and I thought it was this. And, yeah. But right now I'm playing SIC guitars. It's this small company out of Italy. My friend Simon makes them for me. He does a fantastic job. I'm working on a couple different builds from a couple different other companies. I wanted to do some really weird different things with guitars that I haven't seen yet. And I'm really excited about how the design process is coming along with those. So hopefully sometime in 2021, 2022, everybody will get to see the results of these weird collaborations that I have going on with a few other companies. We'll see what happens with that. In terms of my rig, all my tone comes from my pedal board. I use a Amp Tweaker Type Metal Pro for my guitar tone, and I use Dark Glass for my bass tone. Both of those just go into power amps, and the power amps power the cabs. It's a really simple setup, and it's a lot easier on me because that way, if I don't have my rig with me, I can just plug my board into whatever backline is there, and I can ballpark half my sound.
Oh, cool. Earlier you mentioned that people are coming to the shows and basically calling you out if you don't have the gear that you talked about or something like that. Do you have a lot of gear nerds that approach you at shows and just want to talk your head off?
Kind of. I mean, I'm usually pretty stoked on it because I like talking about gear.
Yeah.
And I'm down to have the conversation, as long as people are chill about it.
Right.
I think I think people tend to get really excited about gear and the things that different people are using. Everybody's always trying to chase a better tone, trying to do things better and sound better. And I get that. I was that way for a really long time too. But it's really important to keep in mind that it's not necessarily the gear; it's what you're doing with it. Some of the best guitarists in the world aren't necessarily using the nicest or most up-to-date gear on the planet. They're using what they've used for the last 30, 40 years because it works for them.
Right.
And it has the sound that they want. So I think it's a little bit more important to find I think it's important to take cues from the people that you look up to or the people that you think have a sound that is kind of cool, but only use that as kind of to point you in the right direction. It's more important to find things that work for you personally and so that you can develop your own sound. I mean, I think some of the most recognizable guitar tones on the planet aren't necessarily the best guitar tones sonically. Like, I mean, if you take the Pantera guitar tone was fucking garbage.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's
Yeah.
not a good guitar tone, at all. But it's really distinct and it worked really well for that band. It's you could say the same thing about Typo Negative. And there's a lot of bands that just that have a certain sound, a certain tone that's very distinct just for them. And I think when you take the time to find something that really works for you, even if it isn't necessarily the latest and greatest thing or the thing that everybody else is using or the coolest thing at the moment, it really helps your band out a lot. It helps you be more unique. It helps you stand out. So, I think more people need to be willing to be more brave with their gear and more willing to use, the pawn shop stuff that, not everybody is into.
Yeah. When was it that you kind of discovered that what you wanted with your own sound? You had mentioned that you felt the same, where you're kind of searching for things. When do you feel like you found the route you wanted to go with sonically?
Yeah. Let's see. I did the Sweetwater rental, or that's what I call it. I ordered I would order a pedal or a preamp or a pedal from Sweetwater. Wait till it came to my house, try it out in my rig. And then if it didn't work out, I would just send it back. And I did that for about a month and a half. I think the guy I was working with was getting really frustrated with me by the end of it because I went through so many different pedals and preamps trying to find the right combo. But I think the real light bulb moment for me was when I started dialing back the distortion on my bass rig. And I realized that in order to get the two rigs to work together, they needed to not stand on top of each other as much as they were.
Okay.
And so by dialing the distortion back a significant amount on the bass rig, I kind of end up with this, it's like a dual distortion thing. So it's like a parallel distortion kind of thing. So the guitar rig is heavily distorted, and that does most of the heavy lifting with the really gnarly, beefy, distorted sounds, whereas the bass rig is a lot more clean. Yeah. And having that cleaner sound in there allows everything to kind of cut through the mix. And so instead of thinking about them as two parts of a whole, and that was the real light bulb moment that kind of allowed everything to get cohesive.
Cool. And I'm sure that must have been a huge relief when you were like, okay, this is it. This is what I've got now. So that's gotta be good. You guys have several endorsements, correct?
Let's see. We're working with Temple Audio. I've been playing their boards for quite some time. They sound effing fantastic. Anytime I've needed anything from the company, they've gotten back to me instantly. And you can't go wrong when you have customer service like that. That and their stuff is just built like a tank. It took me a little bit to get everything dialed and up and running, but just playing one of their boards has cut down my setup and teardown time getting on and off stage significantly. So it's made everything lightning fast and a lot easier. So, you know, at the end of a show, after you played a really gnarly set and the adrenaline's still going through your body and you're scrambling to get off stage so the next band can do their thing, it makes it a lot easier because there's just less things to unplug and less things to deal with, which is great. And I couldn't do that without the board. They've taken really good care of us. I play bare knuckle pickups on my guitar. And when I picked up that endorsement, I was really excited because I've been playing their gear for a long time. And working with them on some of the new pickups for some of the new guitars has been really, really awesome. We're pushing things in a few new directions, trying some new things with some pickups that I'm really excited about. And it's been really cool to work with a company that is kind of on the same page and is down to experiment and take some risks and try some new things. So, you know, I really I think it's really important when you're working with different companies and when you're taking on different endorsements to work with people that you can genuinely back, that are doing stuff that you really believe in and that are already making products that you can stand by. Speaking of which, we I think it was about a year and a half ago, we got an endorsement from Diodario. And I've been playing their strings for quite some time. David's been playing Evans drum heads for a very long period of time. So it just it worked out really well. And when the whole pandemic hit, they switched their drum head factory over to making face shields for hospitals. And
Wow.
so because there was a massive medical supply shortage, so
Yeah.
they saw a gap, stepped up to the plate, and got a lot of face shields to people in the medical community that needed
That's
them.
amazing.
And then they retooled their website, created a new portal for all their artists to be able to sign up so that people could find them for lessons. And so they provided a resource for artists to be able to bring in a lot of income for themselves. And I'm sure that company is part of the reason why a lot of bands and artists have been able to survive and stay afloat during this whole thing. And then when Black Lives Matter became a bigger deal and started to pick up steam, they shifted a lot of their social media platforms and provided a platform for all of their POC artists to be able to get the message out that they needed to say, which was really cool of them too. So, and they haven't advertised about for any of it. And you know, a lot of people are unaware of all this really awesome work that they've done, which kind of shows you where their heads are at because they're not using it as, you know, a big PR opportunity. They're just doing it because they feel it's the right thing to do, which is cool. So, and that, as a person who's endorsed by them, that makes me care about the company that much more. And that makes me that much more stoked to rep their brand because they're doing stuff I can get behind, you know? So I think it's really important to, take the time to research the companies that you're working with, not just jump at anything that's thrown at your head. And, you know, if you follow your gut and you work with the right people, I think you always end up in a good position.
Nice. That's an amazing company to be working with.
Totally.
Let's see here. Now, do you have like a preferred setup for your live shows as opposed to recording at the studio? You had mentioned like some of the gear that you use, it's easier to get load on and off the stage. Is there something you're a little more comfortable with in the studio versus on the stage?
You know, for the last album that we did, when I came into the studio, I brought so many amp heads and so many different pedals and just so much goddamn gear. And we ended up just using the same stuff that I use live because that's what I was comfortable with. That's what sounded right. And that was the sound. And so for this album, I just left the big mountain of gear at home.
Nice.
I just brought my usual live rig and, you know, one or two extra things just for flavors here and there. And, but yeah, it's so when you hear a Pound record, like you're hearing the same stuff that we use live. We don't really switch it up all that much. I think aside from the things, you know, how our rigs may have evolved or changed a little bit in the time that it takes to record to when we're playing live, for the most part, it's what you're hearing on the record is what you're going to hear live. And, you know, I think there's something to that. I really like it when a band sounds the same way live that they do on the record.
Yeah,
When you're using the same kind of things and they're getting the same kind of sound at least ballpark. I really dig that, and I really respect that. I'm not trying to talk down on bands that do different things in the studio. You know,
Right,
musicians
right.
should do whatever works for them, but you know, it's I just think it's always kind of cool when it's a band and instantly starts playing and you just go, oh yeah, that's the sound. Like it's recognizable as them.
Yeah, nice. Now, before you were in Pound, you were working at a commercial radio station, correct, in Seattle? Let's see.
Well, while I was in Pound,
Oh, okay.
let's see, we've been yeah, David and I have been doing Pound for I think we're coming up on 11 years now,
Oh, nice.
something
Wow.
like that, 11 or 12. So we've been at it for quite some time.
Okay.
I worked at KDSW in Seattle for a long time, just as a board operator, and then eventually as an on-air personality. You
Nice.
know, it was a really cool part of my life. It was a big part of what I do. It was a big part of my identity as a person. And as much as I miss doing that, it's been really nice just to focus on the band full time now. I think I think working in commercial radio gave me a really solid perspective on what things are like on the other side of the music industry, as far as how PR actually functions. It gave me a lot of experience on what it's like to be on the other side of the share when you're doing interviews, because I got to interview so many people and talk to so many people and see how it's done on a professional level.
Right.
So it's definitely given me a lot of valuable insight that I've been able to use for my own band. It's made me more comfortable giving interviews because I get how it works outside. And it was a cool time. It was good times.
And, I mean that's a pretty large radio station that you were working with, though, right? I mean, wasn't that the radio station that broke like Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Pearl Jam?
Yeah, it was. You know, I think the KISW was huge, and they were really instrumental in kind of growing the Seattle music scene into what it was. I think there's still a. I kind of wish that in a lot of ways that radio would get back to that, to breaking smaller bands, into doing some cool regional stuff. I think over the last 10 to 15 years, maybe even longer, the focus of radio internationally has much more shifted into focusing on the global market
Yeah.
versus the regional markets like they used to. And I think that's definitely taken away a little bit of the magic. KISW did a really good job, and is still doing a really good job of keeping things as regional as they can, and working with the local community and the local music scenes as much as they can. But at the same time, I think they are definitely falling into some of the trends of what you have to do to maintain a large major radio station. I mean, you can't just stick local the entire time and expect to still have a following and not to grow. So, you know, I think it's you know, I think they do as well as they can with the way that the industry functions right now.
Yeah. When you were an on-air personality, I mean, did you get to interview anybody notable? I mean, like somebody that you were like really stoked on being able to talk with?
Yeah. Let's see, God, I feel really fortunate because I've been put in a position where I've gotten to meet most of my heroes, like, you know, guys that I had pictures on my wall when I was a little kid, you know,
Hmm.
in front of you. I think one of the really big ones was interviewing Kirk from Crowbar. That was a really memorable one. Just to hear what it takes to write a good riff,
Mhm.
and how to, let's see, I'm trying to think of some other really big ones. Interviewing the guys from Behemoth a long time ago. That was really cool. A long time ago, which was also really sick, because that's one of those bands that kind of shifted the entire genre in a new direction. And getting to hear their perspectives and some of their stories was really, really awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. Was this, did you get to go like backstage at shows and whatnot? I mean, were you able to interview people at the shows? Were they coming to the studio?
A little bit of both. It's sometimes people would come up to the studio. Sometimes we'd go backstage. Sometimes it would be on the tour bus. It just kind of depended on how things worked out. The longer you're in it and the more you're a part of the industry, the more you get to know some of the bands and some of the people, and the more you'll start to recognize the same folks. Like there were certain tour managers and bus drivers and things that we would just see on repeat just because they were working with all the same bands that we were interviewing. And
Right.
it's you get a feel for just how small the industry actually is, and just how interconnected everything is, because you'll be having these conversations, and this guy that you met, this guy that I would have met working at some pop punk show, working at a venue, would show up and be the bus driver or the merch guy for some death metal band that
Yeah.
I'm doing an interview for the radio station. And he'll be best friends with the merch girl for this band. And she is in a relationship with the guy from, this hip hop group that I've worked with at some venue somewhere else. And so it's really interesting to see how interconnected the entire industry is, even outside of the genres. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really realize is, a lot of the genre division stuff that happens in the blogs and the websites and on social media and stuff like that just doesn't really exist when you get
Right.
a little bit, when you get up past the local level. Everything's all interconnected and everybody knows each other.
Yeah, definitely. Now, with what you learned and like all these connections that you made at this radio station, do you do anything with that now currently? Do you do anything with that outside of Pound?
A little bit. I've been doing a lot of consultation meetings with bands,
Okay.
just teaching younger or smaller bands, or bands that are just looking for some direction,
Mhm.
better ways to go about being a band. I think that it's one of the weird things about the music business is that people always forget that the second half of that. And it
Right.
takes a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot of skills outside of music to be able to properly run a band,
Mhm.
properly run a PR campaign, properly run your merch, keep your books straight. There's just all these other skill sets that are involved that, you just never even think about when you're picking up an instrument and just jamming in your basement with your friends.
Right.
And then all of a sudden your band starts doing better. You start playing a lot more shows and you realize, I got to figure out how to handle my finances. There's some band on the other side of the country that has the same name as us. It might be a good idea to maybe trademark my band name. I need to, and then you realize you're pulling in money and you go, oh crap. What happens if I get audited?
Right.
Now I have to set up my band as an LLC and run it as a business. And it's like there's all these other aspects to it that I wish that I had known about decades ago, because I would have been better about it at this point. So I really do everything that I can to try to help the other people in the music community that maybe don't have these skill sets yet or are looking to develop these skill sets. And I try to push them in the right direction and give them some pointers on what they can do to up their game a little bit. Because, we're all in this together. It's one big, huge music family. So, the better other bands are at doing this, the more bands I will have to be able to play with and work with that actually have their shit together.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I think it's something that all musicians should be doing as much as they can, is trying to give everybody else a leg up. It drives me bonkers when I see somebody in a bigger band complaining about a lack of professionalism in smaller bands, and or when I see on a local level a local band complaining about other local bands that aren't very good at this or that, and it's like, well, go help them.
Yeah.
Offer, like, teach them. If if you want to have other sick bands to play with, help them be a sick band.
Yeah.
You know, it's really a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm glad that you share that same sense of community. Because I've had similar conversations with people before. They'll complain about, like you said, like a touring band will complain about a local band. I'm like, well, why don't you help them? Like, why don't you tell them what they should be doing instead of just getting mad at them or something like that? You know, like this is like one of their first shows, or like it's help them as opposed to being negative. And I think
Totally.
yeah.
No, that's huge. I feel like there's not as much of that. I wish there was more of that in the metal community. I see a lot more of that in the hardcore community than anything else.
Definitely.
And I think that's a cue that the metal community could definitely take.
Yeah.
You know, I can't even imagine what it must be like dealing with promotions on your level. Just like having to deal with band egos and you know things going sideways with locals and things like that, and it's just having to middleman that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting when you're literally standing in between like an artist and the venue, and you're trying to defuse a situation. You're like, hey guys, everybody, let's chill. We all have to do the show together, and we can solve whatever our problems are after we play and whatnot. But it's and you're right. I do definitely see more of that community in the hardcore scene as opposed to the metal scene, which is frustrating because I was mainly a metalhead growing up, and that's just what I thought the community was like. I thought all other genres would be like this, where it was a lot of elitism and whatnot. And so once I finally listened to other music and went to other shows, it was really cool to notice like, oh, it doesn't have to be like this.
See, I had the same experience. I didn't get into hardcore until, I think just 6, maybe 7 years ago. I didn't grow up with it.
Right.
And when I started going to shows outside of metal shows and experiencing other aspects of the heavy music community, I started to realize that just there was a completely different way to do almost all of this. There's a completely different way to approach working with venues, interacting with other bands, interacting with other musicians. It's a completely different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And it really flipped a lot of things around for me and set a light bulb off. And I think one of the biggest aspects that a lot of people hated about hardcore, but I love it. I think one of the biggest aspects is the soapboxing between bands. Like, I love it when a singer gets up on stage, grabs a mic and just says, hey, here's something that's been on my mind about, about whatever, and they'll just talk about, they'll do some public speaking and they'll give you something to chew on and something to think about as you get punched in the face in the pit. And, I think that's important. That kind of stuff's important. And I'd love to see more of that in metal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and some of these metal bands, they're playing huge stages that hardcore bands aren't necessarily reaching sometimes. And it would be nice if they used this big stage that they're on in front of this big crowd to do the same thing and to talk about important issues that are happening. And so it's always great to see that at hardcore shows, and it's great that hardcore really had a revival in the last couple of years. So like some of these artists could do their soapboxing in larger audiences. I mean, like that what was that tour last year? It was like Knocked Loose and like a ton of other huge hardcore bands now. And they were playing like House of Blues and whatnot, and I'm just like, that's great. It's amazing.
Yeah, that Knocked Loose is a really cool band because when they did their first major headlining tour, they could have chosen anybody to go on tour with. Hardcore band or anybody from the metal scene would have been stoked to be on that tour.
Yeah.
And instead of having an ego about it, on tour with them. And like Terror is like one of the biggest names in hardcore. Like that band is absolutely unfuckwithable in terms of a live show and in terms of just like, in terms of music. I mean, Terror is awesome. There's a reason that band is legendary. And for a young band to be like, hey, we want to have Terror be our opening band.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of balls.
Yeah.
But it was a really sick move because there's a lot of younger kids that are getting into hardcore for the first time that have no idea who the fuck Terror is.
Exactly.
they didn't grow up before, they haven't listened to the music, and at the same time, so all these young kids are experiencing like they're experiencing a terror show for the first time and like seeing where all this stuff came from and getting a taste of the history of hardcore.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they're also pulling a lot of the old heads that have maybe never checked out Knocked Loose before, that are completely unaware of what the younger generation is up to.
Yeah.
So it was a really, really smart move for both bands. And I'd like to see more of that kind of stuff happening, you know. And I think the metal community really needs to take some notes on that and start doing the same kind of thing. You know, it's awesome when you mix things up like that and, you know, give people a taste of both generations at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% agree. So I got one last question for you here. A little bit more of just a personal opinion. Who would you say is, like, bar none, like the heaviest band of all time?
Oof. Okay, that's a toss up for me. Because there's different kinds of heavy. There's there's fast heavy and there's slow heavy. I'm gonna give you two.
Okay.
For fast heavy, I'm gonna have to go with either Nasm or let's see. Yeah, I think I'd have to go with Nasm for fast heavy.
Nice.
For slow heavy, I'm gonna have to say, God, it's really a toss up. For slow heavy, I'd have to say either Admiral Angry, or there's this band from Ireland that I've been a huge fan of for a decade that everybody should get into. They're called 7.5 Tons of Beard. It's a really it's a
what a name.
Stupid heavy band. That band is so off the charts, incredibly heavy. I highly recommend everything that they've done. They have this song called "The Fear," which is it's got this riff that just keeps getting heavier, and it's really, really punishing. That band just has such a massive sound. And when I try to write really stupid heavy riffs, like knuckles through the floorboard style riffs, that's kind of the target that I'm aiming for. So, you know, if you're into the slower stuff that we're doing, you're gonna love the slower stuff that they're doing, because it's awesome. Nasm, Admiral Angry, and 7.5 Tons of Beard. I'm cool with those.
Nice. Yeah, those are great choices. I want to check out 7 Tons of Beard, you said?
Yeah, 7.5 Tons of Beard. Their album Denied the Basics. That's the one, man. Every song of that album, every second of it is just stupid heavy.
Nice. I'm for sure listening to that after this interview. Well, awesome, cool. Ryan. Thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate talking with you. And hopefully we can work together again soon.
Absolutely. Take care of yourself, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Take it easy.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Please check out Pound and all of their links below. Also check out Rad Music's links below, and give us a like and subscribe.